The winter 2024 regular season in Rhode Island is complete, and that means it's time for the playoffs. We're going to break down all four of those quarterfinal matchups that we have coming up next week in Rhode Island. We're going to reveal those matchups, break them down, and the times, and kind of explain how we got there after a very interesting week 9 that was supposed to be week 6. But let's kind of get to some of those matchups and how we got there in week 9. Welcome to the post-game show. It's a one-man crew today. So a lot of me. So hope you're ready for an experience, that's for sure. I'm channeling my inner Bill Simmons, Colin Cowherd, shout out to the GOATs, but I don't know how they do it. We're going to find out how they do it for 15, 20, 30 minutes by themselves. I mean, Colin Cowherd does 3 hours on radio nearly by himself with some guests. Obviously, no guest planned. We'll see if anyone joins, but no guest planned here on this week's post-game show. But a very important post-game show as, again, we have those playoff seeds ready to go for you guys. So let's kind of go in order of how things went in week 9, and we'll see how this goes. But again, week 6 on the schedule page, if you're looking for the stats, but week 9, it kind of all starts, and a lot of the tiebreakers and scenarios started with the regulators, and they took on the Air Mambas in week 9. They did pull out a 8-point win, so that kind of kept the door open for them to climb into a top 3 seed, which we'll get to how that actually played out in a second. And you can find the standings. We're going to post the bracket by the time you're watching this. The bracket will be on all of our social media, so you can see the different matchups and who's exactly which seed. But the regulators do win in week 9, thanks to another good game from Tommy McSparren, 22 points, 11 rebounds, and Justin Titsworth, 20 points, and 5 threes made again for him. So those two really been leading the way. Wouldn't be fair to not shout out Joey Cordero, 13 points, 3 threes himself. So I think those three, and then Luke, let's shout out Luke Barkoff, 7 points. And Doug Whedon's had some big games, not so much, kind of took a backseat role in this one. But those three, I mean, Tommy McSparren, Justin Titsworth, and then Joey Cordero have been really leading the way for this regulators team, as they have won 5 of their last 6 to close out the season. So they started 0-2, they finished 5-3, and I kind of teased it, but they were able to, with the win and some help, get that 3 seed. And I'll kind of explain what that means potentially down the road in the playoffs for them and for the other teams that may advance. But they do take care of the Air Mambas in a game that was close. They kind of jumped out. They saw that lead erased in the 3rd quarter and nearly a tied game entering the 4th. But again, the regulators held off the Air Mambas, is fair to say, and made some plays down the stretch, took care of the ball, hit some free throws, and sealed the win there, as the Air Mambas unable to kind of pull off that comeback in the 4th quarter. Shout out Luis Ramirez. We do it every week, but 22 points, 6 rebounds for him. Another 3 of 3 shooting from 3. Just been consistent like we've talked about for this team. Brendan Kakela, 12 points, 2 threes himself, and he had a big emphatic and one. Everyone in the gym heard that when he made the and one on that play. So big nights from them. And the Air Mambas, with the loss, they still needed some other things to happen, but after some tiebreakers, they fall to the 6th seed, and they'll take on the regulators again. We have one of our 2 kind of rematches from week 9 that we'll see again in the quarterfinals, as the 3 seed regulators will take on the 6 seed Air Mambas. So the Air Mambas finished 3-5, and look to avenge a week 9 loss. I mean, now let's wipe the slates clean. The records don't ultimately matter. Win in advance in the playoffs. It's a one and done playoff, kind of like March Madness. It is March, so we'll see an 8-point game. I mean, some things go some different ways. We'll see how Mario Valerio's doing. I know he left the game with an injury, so they'll need him back, that's for sure. But we'll see. And those teams, it's a fun matchup. I mean, we'll save the matchup for down the road. Let's kind of finish week 9. But it is a fun matchup, and it's a classic 3-6, I think, matchup. And kind of the regulators are favored, but look out for the Air Mambas. I mean, we'll see. I think I have higher expectations just from some of those guys being in the league, last season and kind of having this experience. We'll see if they can pull off the upset in the quarterfinals in the winter season. Let's get to that other game that happened at 8 o'clock, which actually also is another game that we're going to see a rematch of in the first round, or the quarterfinals of the playoffs. Lob City unaffiliated. Both teams only had 4 guys. One team only finished with 3 guys, but it was a big Lob City win. Kind of built a lead in the first half and carried it on. We don't need to go too much into the flow of this game. It did get a little the lead grew for Lob City as they cap off an 8-0 undefeated season. Both of these teams knew coming in that they would be playing again in the quarterfinals. And when it's 4-on-4 and there's no subs, there's not much you're going to be able to kind of hide or save for next week. But Lob City does get the win. They improved to 8-0, and we'll kind of again preview the full bracket in a second. But capping off the undefeated regular season, Colin Burns, 56 points. When you're playing the whole game, I was talking to Joe Secatore, he was texting me. I mean, this is, I guess, how Gian Avdija, last season or 2 seasons ago went for 90, right? Obviously that takes, and 56 is nothing to laugh at for Colin, and 47 for Joe Secatore in this one. But when you're in the game the whole time, and then you're obviously also super talented, and you're getting, let's see how many shots they took. I mean, only 30 field goals for Colin Burns and 27 field goals attempted for Joe Secatore. So not a ton of shots, but that's one of the ways you put up a lot of points. If you're in the game the whole time, you're one of the main offensive creators for your team. And so they combined for 103 points between those two players, Colin Burns and Joe Secatore. So 11 threes for Joe Secatore and 9 rebounds for Colin Burns to go along. I'm sure they'll have I'm sure Lob City will have their full team back next week as they get ready to make a playoff run. And they do start with unaffiliated, who was led by Eric Fowler. A really good rookie season for Eric Fowler, 37 points, 13 rebounds, kind of trying to do everything he could to keep him in it. He made a 3, and doesn't take too many. So when he makes some, that's awesome. Seth Coates with 19, Anthony Torres with 17 and 8 rebounds himself, so kind of helping out. Joey Niederberger with 16 as well. A little balanced scoring there for unaffiliated compared to Lob City. But again, that's your 1 seed Lob City and your 8 seed unaffiliated in the playoffs. Let's get to the game we can kind of glance over more quickly at 9 o'clock, was the Halfway Crooks and Road Dogs. Really a game that we previewed on last week's post game. I think I put some people on the spot to make a pick, and then very anticlimactic as the Road Dogs unable to get enough people to play and do have to forfeit, which, if you remember last week, the path for the Regulators to get a 3 seed and kind of be on that side of the bracket rather than the 1-4-5 side of the bracket was a win in week 9 and a Road Dogs loss. So with the forfeit, that fills that path. There's the Road Dogs loss. The Halfway Crooks get that 2 seed. They were in the 2 or 3 spots anyway. And then that, puts the Road Dogs in the 4 seed. So after starting 4-0, they finish 5-3. We talked about them playing some harder teams. A forfeit doesn't help. I mean, who knows how that game would have actually went. We may now not see those 2 teams play as the way the bracket falls. And again, we'll preview all of this in a second. The Halfway Crooks and Road Dogs now on opposite sides wouldn't play again unless they can meet in the finals. And so it does set up, speaking of Lob City is the 1 seed, a rematch with the 4th seeded Road Dogs if they're able to beat the 5 seed. So let's talk about the Owl Waves here in a second as well. But if everything stays chalk, we'd be getting a rematch from 2 weeks ago, from week 8, yes, where it was Lob City narrowly beating the Road Dogs 51-39 in a grinded out, foul-filled game. Not a lot of offense, even though it was a very competitive game, and it wasn't that there wasn't shot making, there wasn't, both teams were trying. And a rematch of that with a spot in the finals on the line, I think, sets up a fun matchup if we get there, because let's get to that other game, the final game from week 9. At this point, the Owl Waves knew they had to win or not lose by about 80 to lock up that 5 seed and kind of be in that 5-4 matchup instead of falling to the 6 with the Air Mamba. So it was all pretty much, locked up. That would have been a tall task for the All Waves to pull that off in the wrong direction. And I'll go over point differential in a second. But they took on the Gym Rats in week 9, and they put them away really in that first quarter, a 23-12 first quarter. They win 91-67 and then kind of coast the rest of the way, play them even, and build on that lead a little bit throughout the game. In the fourth quarter, win that quarter as well by 8 and kind of seal the deal. But the Owl Waves, important to mention, winners of 4 of their last 5, and beat teams like the Regulators and beat, the Gym Rats, and took care of, I'm pretty sure, let me make sure I get it right, the Air Mambas in week 7 by 13. So the regulators by 3 in week 8. So the All Waves here rolling, and that sets up for them, which again we'll get to in a second, a 4-5 matchup, All Waves and Road Dogs. So I'll go back and kind of talk about that matchup in the regular season in a second. But for All Waves in this one, Nicholas Montanino, Corey's already talking about it. They didn't have him, their big man, in the regular season when they played the Road Dogs, and now they do have him. 33 points in week 9, 7 rebounds. Is very involved in everything that team does, and that'll be one of the things that I kind of preview, how some matchups to watch, some things to watch as these playoff matchups take place on Tuesday, March 12th. But Terrence Gallo at 30 himself on 15 of 16, a lot of attack in the basket for Terrence. Had a really cool poster. I'm sure you guys will see on social media sometime this week, but 30 for him. So shout out to him, our defending slam dunk champion, who hopefully will be back to defend his crown and get a rematch against Joe Secatore. I'll break some news about potential dunk contest participants for All-Star Night in Rhode Island. But Corey Strickland with 13 and Andrew Valley with 11, who's kind of come along, and talk about the All Waves winning 4 of their last 5. Nicholas Montanino, a big part of that. Terrence Gallo does what he does. Corey Strickland does what he does. And Andrew Valley making some threes, 1 of 2 in week 9, but has been really picking up the shooting for All Waves and has been a important part of stretching the defense and kind of creating some space down low for Nicholas Montanino. As for the Gym Rats, Brandon Whitman again in street clothes. So we had Coach Whitman, but he already told me kind of once we knew the matchup, and it's my team against his team in the 2-7, he'll be back for the playoffs. So that's what we like to hear. Brandon Whitman in his first season will be back, but was not available in week 9. Thomas DeAndrea led the way, 30 points, 15 rebounds. He had a good game against the Halfway Crooks when they played in the regular season as well a few weeks ago. And they'll need more of that. And I mean, he's been consistently doing it. So there's nothing, we expect that to happen again from DeAndrea. Dylan Gallagher has been a good shooter this season, 3 of 12 in week 9, but is again another one of those pieces where if he hits some shots, Brandon Whitman back creating some offense. We'll see. We'll see if the Gym Rats can pull off that upset. Unable to get the win in week 9, but again, we're not at full strength. But 25 for Gallagher, that's the type of offense they need to continue against the team in the Halfway Crooks that likes to run. So that recaps week 9. I'm going to kind of list over the seeds really quick. We talked about Lob City, the top seed, 8-0. Halfway Crooks with 2 losses, 6-2. Lock up with the forfeit win. That 2 seed. The Regulators, the 3 seed I talked about with a win and a Road Dogs loss after finishing the season 5-3, the same record as the Road Dogs, but it was a Regulators win in week 5, 68-49. Sure, the Road Dogs only had 4 players in that game, a little undermanned. A win is a win, and the Regulators beat them, and that's the difference from the 3 seed and the 4 seed, which again could matter in a future matchup in the playoffs. Potentially in the semifinals if everybody advances. The 5 seed All Waves at 4-4 didn't even need a tiebreaker. The Air Mambas, because they took care of business. The Air Mambas 3-5 lock up the 6 seed. The Gym Rats with the 1-7 record are the 7 seed, and we knew that coming in regardless of their week 9 result. And unaffiliated, the 8 seed at 0-8. So again, it's March Madness matchups, right? 1 seed versus 8 seed, 2-7. 3-6, 4-5. So let's start with some of the rematches. I mean, we talked about Lob City and unaffiliated. Those teams just played. I don't really think anyone's going to be expecting an upset in that one. But, we get some more guys there for unaffiliated, get Lob City back at full strength. And, that's why we play the games, right? It's 1 win. So we'll see if unaffiliated can pull that off. I think a lot of people expect Lob City to kind of advance through that one. And then let's stay on that side of the bracket, just while you guys are listening or following along. The winner of Lob City unaffiliated will take on the winner of the 4-5 matchup, which is the one I teased a little bit, Road Dogs and All Waves. And again, Corey Strickland talked about when those teams played, and it was in week 1. So another week 1 rematch in Connecticut. We had a week 1 rematch in the finals between Yaga and Get Money. This is the week 1 rematch in the quarterfinals between the 4-seeded Road Dogs and 5th-seeded All Waves. It was a 4-point game. Corey made some statements in some past interviews about how a goaltend should have went a different way, and maybe it changes the outcome of this game, and then maybe it's the All Waves as the 4 seed. Who knows? Things change big time. But like I talked about, no Nicholas Montanino, for the All Waves. So who knows kind of his impact in this one. And for the Road Dogs, that was their first game. A lot of everyone on the Road Dogs, their first game in the Legacy Leagues ever. So, fast forward 8, 9 weeks, 2 full months later of Legacy Leagues games, and the Road Dogs started 4-0. Have played teams close, played Lob City tough, like we just talked about a few weeks ago. Jalen Ardrey led the way. Mark Washington 0-4 from 3, and since then he's picked up his shooting. Anthony Lyons 4-6. So, I mean, this Road Dogs team has picked up the scoring, has figured out some of the offense from going 1 of 8 in week 1 from 3, 55% from the floor and only 33 shot attempts. Both of these teams, especially the All Waves in week 1, 3 of 11 from 3. So we talked about Andrew Valley. We talked about, he went 1 of 1 from 3 in week 1. We expect him to get, some more opportunities. Adae Bright with 19, kind of one of those returning players for the All Waves in week 1. We'll see if he's able to get back on the court. I know he injured himself last week, so we're going to look for Josh DePina, who only had 4 points in week 1. He's picked up the scoring throughout the season, has kind of figured out his role on this team and really how he fits in and what he does well in this league, which is creating offense, shooting, scoring. I mean, he's been able to kind of take on that load for this All Waves team, along with Nicholas Montanino down low, defending, scoring in the post, getting those easy buckets, pick and rolls, and creating some mismatches. So we'll see how the Road Dogs handle this one. Again, I expect things to be different from week 1 in a good way for both teams. I'm not going to make any picks, let's put it that way. I will leave that to the comments on Instagram and everywhere else. You guys can make your picks and talk your shit. But, a 4-5 matchup, I think, with kind of how these teams are trending too, it sets up a really competitive game. We talked about how the All Waves, winners of 4 of their last 5 to close the season, and the Road Dogs, not so much winners, of 1 of their last 4, and after starting 4-0. So a little deceiving. You start 4-0, obviously, it's going to be difficult to continue that pace. And I expect the Road Dogs, after being one of the better teams all season, to find a way to pull this out. So there's a semi pick for you guys and maybe just more fuel for the All Waves, but wouldn't surprise me. It's one of those that wouldn't surprise me if either one of these teams advance with how they're both playing heading into the playoffs. That's all you can ask for. We want some good games here in the playoffs. So there's your 4-5 preview, the Road Dogs and All Waves. That game will take place at 8 o'clock on Tuesday, March 12th. The other 8 o'clock game, let's get to it right now, a rematch from week 9, the 3-seed Regulators and 6-seed Air Mambas. So we just talked a lot about those two teams when they played this past week in week 9. And again, it was the Regulators beating the Air Mambas 67-59. Now, we already went over the stats on this, but really from this game, the keys for me, Tommy McSparren. So how do the Air Mambas adjust and maybe try to focus on him a little more? Because I think anytime you play someone for the first time, they can do some things that even if your game plan is to stop them, seeing it is different than in your mind planning to stop it, right? Well, they've seen him and they saw this entire team 7 days ago when we throw the ball up and tip off in the quarterfinals. So what's the game plan and what tendencies were you able to pick up? He likes to drive right. He, is going to pump fake, so don't fall for that. Things like that. That's nothing specific with Tommy. He's had a great season, and he's kind of come into his own as well for this Regulators team as they've won, like I talked about, 5 of their last 6. He's been one of the leaders, if not the leader for this team. So just what adjustments can the Air Mambas make maybe to lock in and take him away and be like, all right, he's going to be your leader. Well, someone else is going to have to beat us. We're not going down like that again. We're not going to let him get his, 20 and 11 rebounds. We're going to let's focus on him and take him out. And let's see if Justin Titsworth can continue. Let's see if Joey Cordero can step up even more, like we talked about, and carry some of that load if you guys want to advance and beat us for 2 times in 8 days, right? And then for the Air Mambas, We talk about Luis Ramirez and 22 points on 8 of 13 shooting in week 9, 3 of 3 from 3. I hate to say it, gonna need more. And that's a lot. I mean, that's a consistent, 8 of 13, 3 of 3 from deep. When he's out there, he makes his presence felt. He's attacking. He, gets offensive rebounds and then puts it right back up and punishes you inside. We're gonna need more. We're gonna need more if you're the Air Mambas and you want to pull off this upset of a red hot Regulators team. Mark DaCosta, 1 of 5. We got to hit some shots. I feel like I'm, the Air Mambas PR guy now, trying to hype him up here. But, Mario Valerio, hopefully he can get back. And 0 of 6, before he exited with an injury is not obviously the goal for him. So getting him back and able to kind of create some offense is huge. Henry Goncalves, 2 of 6 from the floor. He brings that energy. I mean, I'm looking for Luis Ramirez, Henry Goncalves, Anthony Ramsey too, 6 points, 3 rebounds. Like, it's so funny. When the forfeit happened, we scrimmaged after, and Anthony Ramsey, stayed around and scrimmaged with us, and he was like dominating. Now, sure, different than a real game. There was not a lot of defense being played, so let's throw that out there. But it's in there. For Anthony Ramsey, you had a really good summer season as well, when kind of more of the offense and the attention was on him. He was able to kind of get those rebounds, get those putbacks, be active, and make an impact on the game. And against the Regulators, between him and Luis Ramirez, they need to take advantage of that. And I think that's something to watch, is how are they shooting? I mean, they're going to have to shoot better than 6 of 23 from 3. And that goes for a lot of teams in the playoffs. You don't want to shoot 6 of 23. But can we get those easy buckets to then set up the outside shots being a little more open? Can Henry Goncalves create and then kick it? Where now the defense is kind of on their heels a little bit for the Regulators. Regulators are a good team. I would expect them to win. I think it's going to be close. So kind of both of our 8 o'clock matchups in the quarterfinals, I expect to come down to the wire, which is going to be awesome, trying to watch them both at the same time. You can watch them both on the live stream. The Regulators, I believe I put on, I lied. Road Dogs All Waves will be on YouTube. Regulators Mambas will be on our Facebook, live stream. So you can watch both at the same time, much easier than, we probably can in person, having them on a little split screen going. But, I would go with the Regulators, trying to make it 6 of their last 7 against a kind of even team, as we saw in week 9. I'm excited. I'm excited for both of those 8 o'clock matchups. And the last matchup at 9 o'clock that we haven't really touched too much on is the Halfway Crooks and Gym Rats. Let's see. I know that game happened kind of recently. Might have been week 8. All right, cool. So like 2 weeks ago, recently. And it was the Halfway Crooks winning 100-78 when these teams played in the regular season. Charles Alexander with 29 and 11. Devin Devon Pina and Ethan Austin with 20 each. Charles Correa with 18, and, kind of let the other guys do their thing. Thomas DeAndrea, like I talked about in this matchup, 32 points, 23 rebounds, and those stats are correct. 3 of 4 from 3 as well, so it was making the threes. Was really having his way, with the Halfway Crooks. And this was a game that in the third quarter was tied. The Halfway Crooks built a little bit of a lead, and in the third quarter, I remember it being erased, and we're, Brandon Whitman's coaching there, and we're like, he's going crazy. He's got his team playing well. And then a, 13-point edge in the fourth quarter, the Halfway Crooks, kind of got some stops, turned it into easy transition and put them away. Now that it's the playoffs, no team wants to be in a game like that, where in the third quarter it's a tied game, when you kind of feel like you're the better team, or you're playing better that game anyway, right? And so, letting teams hang around is not a good recipe come playoff time. And so, we'll see if the Halfway Crooks are able to kind of turn it on from the start, and gonna have to do better than a 35-30 rebounding edge, being out rebounded by the Gym Rats, and I think that's the focus in this one. Thomas DeAndrea, as good as Brandon Whitman is, and he's been good, and he's a creator for them on offense, Thomas DeAndrea can, if he can, replicate that performance, not that he needs to go nuts with 32 and 23. That's a tall ask, even though it very well could happen again. 25 effective shooting, 2 for 2 from 3, and 15 rebounds. he had 11 offensive. If he can have 15 rebounds and 9 of them offensive, creating those second chance points for the Gym Rats, that sets up kind of what the Gym Rats need to happen. And they need, some threes like we talked about from Dylan Gallagher. He can't go 1 for 11 again like he did in week 8 against the Halfway Crooks. I mean, he's a good shooter. Tim Candelo is 3 of 4, kind of need that again. Thane Denton 0 for 10 from 3 when these teams last met. That can't happen for the Gym Rats. 9 of 39 from 3, like we talked about in the previous matchup, isn't ideal and isn't going to cut it when you're trying to pull off an upset like this. So same thing for the Air Mambas. It goes for the Gym Rats. Let's kind of, I think 39 threes, 35 to 43s is the goal, just to kind of try to even out maybe some of the offensive disparity that I think is fair to say for the Gym Rats. If they can take 35 threes and make 15, that's not even crazy. That's not even 50% from 3. And, in a game, it's not easy to necessarily shoot as a team 50% from 3. But if you can go 15 of 35, 15 of 40, that's 45 points, right? And so now, you get DeAndrea giving you 25 like we talked about. It puts you at 70, right? That's a good start. I mean, the Halfway Crooks put up 100, but if you can get, 70, 80, 90 points and get in that range and be effective, that's your best plan. And for the Halfway Crooks, Seven Devon Pina, gonna have to, I'll call out my own team. Why not? Gonna have to kind of man up in defensive terms against Thomas DeAndrea and, out rebound him. I think that's the goal, right? Like if we can dominate the glass, everything else should kind of fall into place. And I think that's the first crack in the armor to watch when you're watching this game is who's winning that rebounding battle. And it starts with, I'd love to help, guys, but that's not, the best plan of attack. It's going to start with Devin Devon Pina and Charles Alexander. And it's a team effort to rebound, but it's going to start with those two dominating the glass as we know they can from past Legacy League seasons. We'll kind of close it here. I mean, I'm pushing 30 minutes, which is insane. That's a lot of talking. So we'll kind of close it here with the way that the matchups fell, like I talked about. So a potential Road Dogs, if they win, I'm not trying to count out the all waves, but a potential Road Dogs Lob City rematch in the semifinals on one side, and another week 1 potential rematch in the other semifinal if it stays chalk and the Halfway Crooks and Regulators are able to win and advance to the semifinals. And that means 2 of those 4 teams would be in the finals. So we kind of talk about, how things fall in the bracket. Not, Lob City's undefeated for a reason and has won all but one of the Legacy League's titles. So not that they necessarily care. And in the semifinals, you're getting a good team regardless, a team that's playing very well, a team that's making shots. Doesn't matter who you play in the semifinals. It's going to be a close game. Should be some good games. We can get those matchups, that's for sure. Regulators, Crooks potentially in the 2-3. Lob City, Road Dogs in the semifinals. That's our post-game show for this week. Hope you enjoyed it. I guess we'll see how the feedback goes on this one. A lot of talking by me, but stay tuned for the live streams of the quarterfinals. We're going to be announcing all-star stuff for Rhode Island, which will be April 2nd after our entire season is over in Tiverton, where we play our games. And I'll close with this because it's only fitting as we enter the playoffs. It's the saying that I have said for many years, and it applies this season especially, because it's fair to say that the Halfway Crooks have, not given full effort the entire time. And 6-2, I mean, the Halfway Crooks are a good team. I can make fun of my own team a lot. The talent's there. I'd hate to play the Halfway Crooks in the playoffs. That's how we end it. That's the saying that comes around every year come playoff time. I'd hate to play the Halfway Crooks. It starts with the Gym Rats. I'd hate to play the Halfway Crooks. It's how it falls sometimes. But I'd always hate to see the purple jerseys of the Halfway Crooks in the playoffs. Never won a title, so I don't know what that saying says ultimately, since the goal is to win it all. I would just hate to play them. It doesn't mean that we're going to win the whole thing. It's just not fun. I, as someone else, would not like to play the Halfway Crooks in the playoffs. Thanks for watching the post-game show. Excited for the playoffs. Let's see who wins the Winter 2024 Championship in Rhode Island. Stay tuned for full coverage all week. And again, thanks for watching.